from the notes. The second one, y'all just worked it on your own as far as recording for the video. Your lowest number was 81. Your highest number was 145. I guess I'm going to write this somewhere too, since I'm doing it for the notes. So I start by doing what? What's the very first thing I find? Yeah, min, max, then use those to subtract. Y'all have already done this, so I'm shorthanding a lot of this, but I guess I shouldn't. So 145, 181, which gives me what? 64? Is that right? I do what with that?
Divide it by the number of classes per unit.
Which gives me, what, 9 point something, right? What do I want to do with that, though? And then, so that's where it brings you to this. I don't need you to, like, write all this stuff off to the side. Going straight to, like, class limits like this is what most of you are going to do. I did the plus stuff on the side so that if you go back and look at your notes, it makes sense what you actually did. So just checking to make sure that we know how to do cumulative correctly, even though you don't need it for the histogram. The first one is what? 4, then. Why did this change? And then what? Now, let's see if I can get this. 8, 24. What? And so I should use that to make sure that I did it correctly too, because it told me in the problem that there was 60. So that last number of your cumulative frequency is always going to be your total. But technically before I did that, I probably should have added these up and gotten that, which is doing the same thing. All right, so that gets me my class limits. Any questions with getting on any pieces of getting class limits? All right, so now my graph itself, I start with my x-axis, and I start at what number? What number am I going to start at? 81. I think I'm going to type it and then go back and put the dashes, if it'll space right. It might not space right. I'll just write it. So my first one's 81. What's my next one? What's the last one that I should write? Because I need to write what would be the next class that I don't, the beginning of the next class that I don't need to use. My spacing is not very great there. I didn't say anything about this, and this is kind of a preference thing. If it's not 0, leave a gap here. If you're looking right here, all the way on the left side of the x-axis, you don't need to do the little shark-looking thing or whatever. But if it's 0, put it all the way up against the x-axis. If it's not, just leave a little bit of a gap. What should my label? If I wrote my label in context, what would my label be down here? SAT. What scores? IQ scores. Sorry. If those were SAT scores, that would be an issue. Label, what's going to go here? What's the highest one I need to get to? Now, you can always go past and go to like 20 and go by 4s or something. That's fine. But you just need to make sure you at least cover. Again, mine does not look spaced out that great. And then my first bar starts at 81, goes all the way. So I want to see your hash marks or tick marks on the x-axis. The tick marks for your numbers that you put on the x-axis are the start and stop of your bars themselves. Our next one's 16, right? And what's this one? What's the next one? And then and my last one is, what's the only thing I have missing? Title. Again, out of habit, I always name it by the graph, kind of to help for notes. What's this one of? I don't remember how descriptive this problem gets. So this is something that happened in the quiz. It didn't say the name of the school, right? But they were all, it said they were all from one school. But if it gave me the name of the school, I wouldn't write this particular. I would just write the name of the school. And some people were writing this particular when there was information that's already given. I need everybody to get their Chromebooks out, which we'll probably almost never use in here. But I want to see if something works for you guys that is a resource y'all can use at home. And I just posted a link on, I think, your Google Classroom. And this link should take you to this random website that some other teacher made sometime. And right here it says TI-84 Chrome extension approved. And I'm hoping it still works. This little button right here, somewhere in here, you should be able to click on it to download that extension. I don't have a Chromebook, so it's not going to let me do it. Does it work on y'all's? Dang it. Okay. That's an old link, so I'll have to figure. I want to be able to find a different one that y'all can have it on your Chromebook just in case. Okay, that's all I needed to know. Then just put them up right now. That's disappointing. Everybody's trying to take free stuff away now. It's not COVID anymore. Even though it is. All right, so let's go back to this graph. Sucks without going into the time of figuring out the actual numbers. Shape. What would you say is best shape here? It's kind of awkward. I'm going to get different answers here. What do you want to say for shape? What are some options? Unimodal. What else? Unimodal where? So let's pretend for the sake of this conversation that I never gave you the numbers. All I gave you was this graph. So unimodal with a peak around somewhere between one in the peak between 101 and 110. What else could I say with shape? I would say a little bit right skewed. I would probably lean more towards right skewed here. There's a couple low numbers, but it's right skewed with the peak at 101 to 110 and decreasing in frequency as the IQ score increased would be a really good description there. You talked about the stuff on the left, and then the rest of it followed a pattern. Outliers, if I never gave you numbers, what would you say about outliers? You would say up here, because if I never gave you the numbers from the paper, pretending I didn't, could you mathematically check? No. So because you can't mathematically check, you would say there appear to be no outliers, which means context. No students had IQ scores that were uncharacteristically higher or lower in relation to the other students. Center, I could go through. I don't want to waste the time to do this. I could do the same thing I did with median and get close to where it is. Spread, at this point, what's the only thing I could do with spread with this graph if it were given to me like this? Range, and I don't even know what it is exactly because I don't know if it's 151, but I know it's less. A range of at most 70, which means the student who had the highest IQ score was at most 70 higher than the student with the lowest. That kind of puts it in perspective for you because the lowest was 81. Some of your homework is going to be detailed socks. Do you understand what I want for detailed socks now? So like you're saying things like talking about the SAT scores, talking about the number or IQ scores, talking about fifth grade students, talking about numbers to justify. Interesting here. Since y'all, if we've got COVID data, I might as well use it. Come on. I want it to be a little bit smaller than that. All right, so this is May of 2020. So this is when everything went terrible. July is when we freaked out. January was when we everybody went for holidays. We're here now. I think this puts in perspective what's actually going on more than anything else. But let's bring it into the conversation of our class. Shape. I would definitely say multimodal. So if you were explaining to someone who has no idea what COVID is or what's going on here, what does it mean to be multimodal? So be more specific. You're saying the right things, yes. And y'all probably can't see it.
It spiked in July.
This would be January. So there were separate clusters to where it peaked once in July, it decreased, it peaked again in January, and it peaked again like now. You might even talk about the difference between those, that the greatest peak was definitely in January of last year. The peak now is maybe a little bit closer to that one than the peak in July, but you're relating. You could use numbers here with the frequency to go with the July. So here it peaked at a height of 6,170 cases per day in January at the highest point. We're here, the highest point was 2,333. Here, our peak at the highest point is 4,082. So you would bring that conversation in. Would I want to talk about center here? Just kind of think about this.
You could, but we're not really done.
Think about it. What would I be finding the center of? The way this graph's made. So would that even be helpful at all? No. So does it make sense to talk about shape here in context and be able to relate it in terms of our class? Yes. Would I want to talk about this graph in terms of center? No, because I'd literally just be finding the center of when we started collecting this data. That is nothing helpful for what we're dealing with. So this x-axis is dates instead of a quantitative variable that measures like what we're dealing with now. So this one looks like a histogram, but it is actually not a histogram. I want to mention one thing, and I might make y'all do it tomorrow. Let's say we've got class A and class B. This is going to be a stem plot that we haven't talked about. If you have notebook paper or the back of another paper, even if it's stem plot or something, you're going to want to sketch this down. I'm going to be super generic. I'm not even going to give you any context here. I'm just going to do enough to be able to make a graph. And now I'm going to make a stem plot to compare these. So go ahead and make your stem plot for class A, and let's do not a, usually you could choose, but for the sake of this, let's not do a split stem. Let's just do a regular stem plot. So do a really quick stem plot of class A. Start in the middle of your paper here. I'll give you that hint. So what's my first number in the middle? On the left side is what? 6, then. So do your stem plot for class A. This should be super easy because I've done it really quick. What should go here? Below it would be then, and so, like I said, I'm doing this really sketched quick. I'm going to write class A over here. I want to directly compare class B to it. How do you think I can do that? I can put them side by side. I can put them even closer than side by side.
Put a line on the other side of like the spine numbers, and then go out there.
But it gets not tricky, but you have to think about what you're doing here. What is my first number in order going to be for class B? 71. Where should the 1 go? Closest to there, because it is closest to the number. So you actually read right to left on that side. So this is 1 here, then 3, then 4, then 7. So closest inside. That's the only thing that's tricky about this as far as people making a mistake is The fact that it's the closest is the inside, and reading it, some people end up reading it backwards. And then just somewhere write back-to-back stem plot. So we have a stem plot and two specific types of stem plots. One of them is a split stem. Don't get that confused with this because it looks like it's split. A split stem does what? Splits up the tens place, whatever that is. A back-to-back literally puts them back-to-back. Where people get mixed up here is if I ask you to find the range of class B, some people accidentally use these numbers to find the highest and lowest, and it would not be, it would be these numbers. And you just have to make sure that you're thinking about it when you're reading it. I might use old data for this. Usually we do a back-to-back stem plot of number of pairs of shoes of girls versus boys. To save time, I might use data that I already collected from last year. Your homework. I'm giving you a little bit different instructions. 51. It gives you a histogram. I want you to do socks, part C and part D, because A and B are kind of asking you generally about socks. 52, I want legit socks, not the way the problem asks it. And then 54, I want a histogram only. I will tell you that for 54, it tells you to use this as your class width. So you don't have to do this. It goes ahead and gives you this number right here, and you start with your lowest and start adding. And again, I'll type this on the daily thing for today.